welcome to our live stream on this Friday. We're very happy to have you join us once again. We try to do these every week as we're getting ready to do our show that'll air this weekend on TBN. Joining me is senior producer for the Huckabee Show, Pam Case, and we'll be taking your questions. I hope you'll be sending them to us, and right now is a good time to start getting them in. Send questions in the chat, or better yet, send us a super chat. Now, we got moderators. They're standing by. They're watching the chat. They'll be feeding the questions to us so that we'll be able to get to as many as possible. We always like to remind you, subscribe to the channel. That way you won't ever miss one of our episodes, and you'll be notified of a lot of great videos that we put together. Hit the notification bell. Leave us a comment. Like the video. And, of course, be sure to share it with all your friends, even your enemies. I'm sure they'll be grateful that you did that. We've had a big day, of course, big news breaking just before we came on with the live stream, and that is the Kenosha, Wisconsin trial of Kyle Rittenhouse. The verdict in about an hour ago, and on every charge, Kyle Rittenhouse found not guilty. To many people, this is going to be a big surprise because a lot of observers were saying since the jury deliberations were taking a pretty long period of time, they were expecting that somebody was holding out. We'd end up with a mistrial. Well, we didn't. Ended up with a not guilty across the board. Every juror polled agreed with the verdict. And the question now is, what will the reaction be across the country? And I'm not just talking about in the streets. I would hope that people would respect that we had a jury trial, that we had a due process for this kid, that he was not tried by Joe Biden, who declared him guilty before the trial even started, or that he wasn't tried by MSNBC or CNN, who declared him guilty before the trial ever started, and without hearing the evidence that was presented at trial. This is what I hope will happen, that America will say, well, that's what our system's supposed to do. Hear the evidence, give every opportunity for the prosecutor to make his case, but always remember that a person is innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt in our system of justice. And the prosecutor failed to do that. And if you had an opportunity to watch much of the trial, I watched as much as I could, I don't know how they could come to any other conclusion. And by the way, don't let anyone tell you this had anything whatsoever to do about racism and white supremacy. Yeah, the kid was white. And every single person that he defended himself against was also white. This was not a race issue. And I really would love to see some of the anchors on MSNBC and CNN openly apologize on their air, not only for prejudging this kid, but also for completely just dismembering the very idea of criminal justice in this country and what it's supposed to be. And they better pray they never go on trial for anything, because I have a feeling that there'll be a lot of people that'll say, hey, karma would be that you guys get tried before you ever have the evidence presented. Anyway, a huge moment, and let's hope that people will relax, take a deep breath, and accept the fact that that's what the justice system is supposed to do. And if we don't like it, if we don't care for the particular verdict, does not mean we get to go loot stores and burn public buildings and private businesses. It means that you accept that sometimes the courts get it right, sometimes they may not, but in this case, I'll say it again, I don't know what other conclusion that they could come to. It seemed like it was an obvious case of self-defense. When someone's putting a gun at your head and you have the opportunity to defend yourself, you should. And that's basically what happened. Hey, we've got something new we're going to introduce to you. You know, sometimes we play you clips from the White House press room where Jen Psaki sort of tries to Psaki it to people like Peter Doocy from Fox News. But it's interesting, the press will sometimes Psaki it to her. We call it the brand new feature here, Psaki Bombs. So you may hear and see that little stinger going on. This happened this week. Jen Psaki was asked if Joe Biden, in meeting with the Mexican president, would reinstate the remain in Mexico policy, which meant that when immigrants came to the border, they wouldn't just be allowed to come into the U.S. They would have to remain on the Mexican side until their hearings could take place to see did they qualify. to come into the U.S. Gee, what a novel idea. You don't open the door till you know who's behind it. Anyway, this was Psaki's answer to that.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. While he's meeting with the Mexican president today, do you expect him to come to an agreement on returning to the Trump-era Remain in Mexico policy?
I don't believe that's intended to be a big topic at this meeting.
You don't think they'll come to an agreement on that today?
I think it was previewed as not a major topic of discussion, so I wouldn't anticipate that.
No, it wasn't a big topic of discussion because it would have been substantive. It would have actually dealt with the crisis at the border. So we're not going to touch that. She was also asked about the Keystone XL pipeline decision that cut it off. And the result is, if you're buying gasoline, I know that you have to from time to time. Are you paying what you paid last year when the average price was $2.11 a gallon this very week across America? This week, it's $3.48 a gallon average across the country. Here's another Psaki bomb.
So any consideration to reversing some of the policies that led to this, maybe reconsidering the Keystone Pipeline as the Prime Minister of Canada this year?
Well, I think the problem with that argument is that the Keystone Pipeline isn't even really functioning. I mean, it was only partially built. It isn't even really functioning. So suggesting that changing that would lower the price of gas, I don't know that that makes substantive sense.
Let me explain why it did make substantive sense. Because you don't necessarily sell the refined gasoline that just got piped in. You're buying oil futures. And the futures are dependent upon what does it look like in terms of access to the supplies. So if you've got crude moving your way and you have more of it coming, that means you're going to have a larger supply. Supply and demand, bigger supply, equal demand, lower prices. Jen, it's not complicated. I know you must have gone to a real nice school and everything. You might want to ask for your tuition money back, because if you don't think that shutting down the pipeline and having a war, as your administration does, against anything oil and gas in this country, while begging OPEC to turn on their spigots halfway around the world, if you don't think that has anything to do with the cost of fuel in this country, like I said, ask for a refund wherever you went to school. All right, here's another Psaki bomb. This is when Peter Doocy is asking if Joe Biden brought up to Xi Jinping of China whether or not they would be cooperating with the investigation into the origins of COVID.
He talked about the importance of transparency, but did he ask President Xi to cooperate specifically with this U.S. intel agency-led investigation into the origins of COVID?
Peter, it's clear that that's what we want. That's what we've been pressing on. I don't have any more to read out for you from the meeting.
You're saying that it's clear. Is it clear to somebody who has a Zoom meeting with the president that that's what he means if that's not what he says?
I think the president has spoken publicly on this a number of times. Our national security officials have conveyed very clearly, I don't think it's a secret. That's what we want. That's what we've been pressing for.
Oh, Jen, it's a big secret because you've never really explicitly said, hey, we think the Chinese knew about the origins of this, perhaps leaked it, certainly didn't tell anybody when it did leak. And the result was millions and millions of people around the world have been killed. And over 700,000, some estimate now 900,000 Americans dead because of this. And basically gut punched our economy and a whole lot of people's lives forever and forever and ever. I think we would like to see the president specifically confront President Xi about this, but we don't have any expectation that it will happen. All right, have we got some questions coming in?
Ready to dive in? We
Sure.
have several, Governor. All right, let's start with Colin today.
Okay.
Colin is asking, have you and Trump recovered from your rivalry?
Rivalry?
Yes, I'd be interested to know about
I'm not sure
that.
what that was about, because even when we were in the midst of the 2016 campaign, Trump and I never had a crossword. In fact, if you'll go back and look at every single debate in that presidential series, you'll never see a crossword between us. In fact, there was one time in the CNN debate at the Reagan Library, they tried to trap me into saying something nasty about Trump and his ties being made in China. I kind of ruined the day of Jake Tapper when I said, you know what? I think I'm wearing a Donald Trump tie right now. And sure enough, I was. And boy, was he ever happy that I didn't ditch on him. So I don't know what you're talking about. Honestly, if you can send something to give me an idea, I was one of the very first people to endorse him when I dropped out of the race. So I truly am at a loss to understand what you're talking about. I like Donald Trump because he was saying so much of what I had been saying back in 2008 about how we've got to get back to the place where we put America first. We've got to stand up to the Chinese and they're cheating on trade. Got to put American manufacturing back. So it was a logical choice for me to support Donald Trump when it was very evident that he had a shot and I didn't.
All right, let's move on to Mark Herta. He is asking this afternoon, Governor, is there any hope for us conservatives in Central California?
Ooh.
Ooh.
In Central California, there's hope there because Central California, if you're talking about the San Joaquin Valley, it's one of the greatest places on earth. Those are great people out there. You go to places like Bakersfield and Visalia and places there where literally the food of the world is produced in the richest soil on earth. And it's a great culture. It really does not fit in to the rest of the state. I mean, there are crazy things happening in San Francisco and Los Angeles and up and down the coast, but you get over there in the San Joaquin Valley and my gosh, there's just a whole different world. So if California ever breaks up and it becomes another country, make sure we keep the San Joaquin Valley. You guys belong to the rest of America for sure.
Okay. We would love it too if you have a chance to share this right now because we're going to be on for a while. And so do that by simply sharing with your friends or maybe even some who you'd like to hear our messages today. Plus, we've got the chat and you can chat right now. And you can also click on that notification bell so you will be notified the next time we are live. Gov Lisa Lamb is asking, why is it that the left is always rioting and burning things down? Does the right need to start acting like this too?
Absolutely not. Under no circumstance would, as a conservative, I ever advocate rioting and looting. Looting because that's just pure theft. That's stealing something somebody else has. I have no right to somebody else's property. I don't even want to covet it. That's a sin against God to do that. So no. And the idea of rioting, that's anarchy. We're supposed to be a civilization, and we're supposed to be a nation of laws, not of passions. We can have passion, but we can't act on just how angry we are. We have to do things in the context of two things. One, what's legal, and then we should go beyond what's legal and we should do what's right. And what's right and what's legal, both are totally negated by this nonsense of going to the streets, hitting innocent people in the head with a brick because you're mad at something the government did or didn't do, burning down a police car, torching a private business or a public courthouse. These are things that happen in places where there is no law. We have a law. If anything, when you see the side of the aisle that is promoting that kind of anarchy, for heaven's sakes, don't vote for them because they don't seem to understand how our country is supposed to function.
All right, let's move on. Joel and Deb write today, Mr. Huckabee, what is your thought on the prosecutor holding the AR-15 in court?
He was a total idiot. I've never seen anything so crazy. If I'd have been the judge, I probably would have asked the bailiff to arrest him. First of all, you never point a gun at anybody. And let me just give you the background. When I was a little kid, we all grew up with some basic understanding of firearms. They're pretty simple stuff. And I'm guessing maybe many of you grew up with these same principles. Number one, treat every gun as if it's loaded, even if you know it isn't. And you've looked right down through the barrel and you know that there's not any shell in there. Doesn't matter. You treat a gun as if it's loaded, even if it isn't. Second, you never, ever point a gun at someone. In fact, you don't point a gun at anything you don't plan to shoot. Three, you don't shoot anything you don't plan to kill. And you don't kill anything that you don't plan to eat. Now, unless that prosecutor intended to eat the jury, everything he did with that AR-15 was wrong, including, and most disturbing, was when he was holding it up and pointing it at the jury, for heaven's sakes, he had his finger on the trigger. You don't do that. You put your finger on the trigger only when you are ready to fire the weapon, not until then. I thought it was interesting when they showed in the trial one of the photographs of Kyle Rittenhouse, him holding his AR-15. If you happen to notice, his finger was extended away from the trigger as every person who's ever been trained to shoot has been trained to do. You don't go around holding your finger on the trigger. That's begging for a disaster. So I think the prosecutor showed what an idiot he was, and he probably helped to acquit Kyle Rittenhouse.
Speaking of which, Marilyn Scott has written in, Governor, should Rittenhouse sue the media? You might have mentioned this.
Oh boy, should he ever. I hope he gets the best lawyers in America and he sues CNN and MSNBC. Too bad he can't sue Joe Biden because of immunity that he has as president. But I'd go through the newspaper clips and all these people who called him a racist, who called him a white supremacist, who called him guilty, who said he committed murder. There's a whole bunch of lawsuits begging to be done. And maybe he'll win such an award, he will own MSNBC and CNN and either shut them down or turn them over to me. And I will run them with a great level of responsibility. Wouldn't that be sweet? I think
I know we've got clips on this, Governor. You might want to hit these first, but we do have a question about your thoughts about the Build Back Better bill in the Senate.
Yeah, let's take a look. We've got, you get ready for this, another Psaki bomb. Here it comes. And this is a Psaki bomb where she was asked about the Build Back Better money. Some of it, by the way, is going to go to millionaires. Remember Joe saying we got to pay our fair share, including the millionaires? They got to pay theirs. She's asked about that. Watch.
And the House could vote as soon as tonight to advance the Build Back Better bill for the president. He has touted this, of course, as he did yesterday in Michigan, as a big boost for the middle class. Is he comfortable where the current provisions stand for these state and local tax deductions, given it would be a pretty significant tax break for the wealthy?
Well, let me start by first, obviously wasn't what he proposed in his initial package, as you know, but just to come back to that. The president also, though, it's been conveyed to him by leaders in the House and Senate that this needs to be included in order for this legislation to move forward. And he certainly understands that.
Well, it wasn't just Joe Biden and Jen Psaki who was having to defend that. Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House, also was pressed by this. Let's see her answer.
Madam Speaker, on the second bullet point on your board there, can you respond to the criticism that when all is said and done on this bill, the people who get the biggest tax cut are millionaires who can take advantage of the changes in the state and local tax deductions?
Thank you for that question. As a supporter of that particular measure in the bill, I want to just say, and thank you for allowing me to clarify what that is about. That's not about tax cuts for wealthy people. It's about services for the American people.
What a load. I mean, back up the truck and dump it out. That's a load, folks. Yes, it's about giving millionaires tax breaks. It's exactly what it is, because they're the ones going to benefit. And the biggest beneficiaries of the whole Build Back Better is really like Build Back the Rich. For all this talk about helping the middle class, this isn't about middle class. This is about helping people in the bluest Democrat-led states who have high taxes, and they're going to get tax benefits from this bill. Now, who's going to get the most tax break? It's going to be people in high tax Democrat states, and it's people who pay the most taxes, which would, by the way, be the millionaires and the billionaires. So if you hear about how this is going to be services for the people, if you think the people who need the services the most are the millionaires and billionaires, you love this bill. This is great. But if you honestly think it's about, quote, what Nancy Pelosi would call the little people, forget about it. It's not where it's going. I'll ask you the simple question. Remember Barack Obama's $800 billion stimulus plan in January of 2009? Keep in mind, this one bill, more than 2 times the cost of that one. Can you name me one road in your community that was built from that? Can you tell me one bridge where you live that was built by that? And this was supposed to be for shovel-ready jobs. Remember those? What happened with them? Nobody can point to something and say, man, we got an airport from that. Oh, we got our sewer system fixed. Didn't happen. And it's not going to happen with this either. It's pretty sad. Okay,
Gov, we've got, I don't know if you knew this or not, we've got over 500 likes and we would love it.
Great.
We could get up to 1,000
be
maybe
wonderful.
during this time that we're together today. So do it and smash that like button. That's what we'd like you to do today. All right, we move on. Frayed Not 2016 says, is there a website, Governor, that shows us a breakdown of the bills that passed without all the mumbo jumbo?
I'm sure the answer is yes. I'm struggling to think of where I would point you. Probably, maybe just go to DuckDuckGo. Notice I didn't say Google. I don't use it. I use DuckDuckGo. I don't want somebody tracking me. But go to DuckDuckGo and put in the question, breakdown of the Build Back Better bill. And you'll probably see several websites, and some of which will be responsible enough to give you good information.
All right, great. We're going back to the Rittenhouse trial just a moment. Governor Daniel is asking, why can't Kyle Rittenhouse sue Biden for comments made before he was ever elected president?
Well, because we do have a longstanding practice that you cannot sue a sitting president. And the reason is because if you could, by the way, people tried to do that to Donald Trump, as you remember, constantly suing him, they would be thrown out of court. I know it's something you'd like to say, well, I wish he could do it. Okay, but if you could sue a president, president would never get any work done. All he'd be doing is sitting through depositions and going to trial, and it just would be disruptive. So that's why we have done it. Doesn't matter if you're Democrat or Republican, and people have tried to sort of go around it. But in the long term, regardless of who's president, it's the best thing. Now, when he's out of office, if somebody feels they have cause, they can try, but it's still very hard. And I'll be the first to admit it ought to be hard, because being president's hard enough. We shouldn't be able to sue the president for what he said. We ought to make doggone sure that he and his party don't ever get back in that office again. That's a better way of dealing with it.
Governor, we have a question from Jamali. Will the mayors and governors of the rioting states ever have to face any consequences for allowing utter chaos and no help?
Only if the voters of those states wake up and quit electing these clowns to office. I don't know how else to say it. We get the government we deserve because we get the government that we elect. And if you live in one of these blue states where the mayors and the governors don't ever stop the rioting, and they don't send the cops in and the National Guard in to say, we're not going to allow looting of stores. If they don't stop it, then don't empower them anymore. Don't let them near those public offices. And that's how you fix it. You don't fix it by sending the Department of Justice in, which right now we know is utterly corrupt. The power of the ballot box. I was in Harding University on Tuesday night of this week, it's a wonderful Christian campus in Searcy, Arkansas. And a question was posed to me. It wasn't intended to be a trick question, but it kind of was. And it said, who do you think has the real power in the Republican Party? And I know what they were asking. They were asking me to say, is it Donald Trump or is it somebody else? And I said, I'll tell you exactly who has the power in the Republican Party, the voters.
That's right.
That's who has the power. Never forget that politicians don't pick the voters pick the politicians. And when the politicians forget that, give them a heave-ho. I would also urge you to make sure that you vote for this channel by subscribing if you haven't already done that. And subscribe to the channel. That way we always can be able to let you know when we're doing things like this live stream. Hit that notification bell and like the channel, share it, and comment. All of those things are important.
I love this question from Ramona King. She's writing, why can't we vote? Why can't we vote for term limits? Why not? How can we start? Somebody that wants to get active, Gov.
I would love to see term limits. I worked very hard for the term limit constitutional amendment in Arkansas that passed in 1992. Unfortunately, a future legislature came in and gutted the law, which made me very angry because the people put those limits in effect and only the people should have taken them out. But at the state level, you can do that. But at the federal level, there's only two ways it can be done. One, you could hope that Congress would pass a constitutional amendment and would amend the Constitution to that effect. Will never, ever happen. So don't assume it will. I don't care which candidate says, I'll put it in that. No, they won't. They won't. It can only be done when there is a convention of the states and when a majority of the states, 37 states, then put this before the American people, and then and only then can we have term limits, which I would love to see us have. Part of the reason is we have it for the executive branch. But why don't we have it for the legislative? And let me add, for the judicial branch. Nobody should look at public service and having a public office as a lifetime appointment. I think it ought to be that you serve an amount of terms and then you go home and live under the laws that you passed on everybody else. I would also have a lifetime ban on any member of Congress ever being able to live within 50 miles of Washington, D.C., and be prohibited for life from ever being a lobbyist for anybody or for anything. You go to Washington, you serve, and then you go home. That's it. And maybe it's 12 years tops. I don't know what the terms should be. I'm open to that debate. But let's just say it's 12. 6 2-year terms in the House or 2 6-year terms in the Senate, and then you're done. Somebody else comes in. I love the idea, and I would certainly love to see it happen.
All right, we're going to see if you love this idea from, I'm going to call it AAA. Will this show, the live stream, ever go to an hour? So there you go.
Well,
somebody
I don't
likes
know. maybe it will someday. If we have enough interest and if there's enough energy out of this old guy, maybe it could. We'll see. The biggest reason that it would do that is probably because we just see the audience for it grow and grow and grow, and people stay with it for the entire time.
Which folks can help us do that right now by sharing, participating, being in the chat, clicking that notification bell, and all the things that help you get notified when we go live. And so that's fun too.
By the way, we're having a hard time finding Kamala Harris. You know, she was the acting president for about an hour today when President Biden had a colonoscopy. I'm sure she enjoyed her time more than Joe Biden did having the colonoscopy. But this week, George Stephanopoulos, or as I like to call him, George Step on All of Us, asked Kamala Harris about the very high price of Thanksgiving this year. Turkeys that cost $12 last year will cost $21 this year. This is how Kamala Harris feels about your pain.
As Americans are feeling pretty sour about the economy as we head into the holidays, it's going to cost more to drive home for Thanksgiving, more to put the turkey on the table, more to buy gifts for the kids at Christmas. What can you do about these high prices? How long is it going to take?
Well, first of all, it's real and it's rough. Groceries, the cost of groceries has gone up. The cost of gas has gone up. And as this is all happening in the context of 2 years of a pandemic, that's one.
Well, it wasn't happening last year, and we were in a pandemic. Grocery prices and gas prices weren't this high. I hate to break this news to you. Madam Vice President, the truth is, you guys got into office, and you could not let the sun fall on your first day in office before you reversed every single thing Donald Trump did. And some of the things you reversed resulted in an economic disaster. And a lot of the high prices that we are seeing, both in gas and groceries, are because of the failed, frankly, uninformed, and to be so bold, imbecilic policies that you've put in place. And so don't act like, well, there's nothing we can do about it. Yeah, there is. And the something you did do about it is what caused it. Here's another Kamala Harris moment when asked about the border problems. Now, remember, Joe Biden put her in charge of the problems at the southern border. She spent all of an hour and a half in El Paso since that happened back in the spring. Here's what she said about the border.
8 months ago, the president gave you the job of addressing the root causes of migration. But last month, we learned that in the past year had the highest number of illegal border crossings since they started to be recorded in 1960. What are you doing to turn that around? How long will it take?
Well, it's not going to be overnight. We can't just flip a switch and make it better.
Oh, no, but you flipped a switch and made it worse. The day you came into office, you flipped the switch. You opened the doggone borders. And it has been record disaster since then. So why don't you flip that switch back the other way? Because you're bullheaded, stubborn, and frankly, because you want the border to be overrun. You honestly think that if all these illegal people come into the country, they're going to vote for you. You're going to give them citizenship and a right to vote. The fact that one of the provisions of Build Back Better is that you don't have to give your Social Security number in order to get government benefits, it says it all. Why would you not want to give the Social Security number? Because if you're an illegal, you don't have a Social Security number. So it's very evident that the Democrats want to give your taxpayer dollars to people who aren't citizens, who are here illegally. Again, if you keep voting for these folks, it's only going to get worse. Well, I hope that you have enjoyed our time together. Be sure, leave questions in the comments section. We may get to them next week. And of course, we ask you to subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, and be sure to like us and give a comment. And by the way, I don't want you to miss the show tomorrow. It's going to be a wonderful show here on TBN, coming to you from Nashville, Tennessee. But on behalf of the senior producer for the show, Pam Case, and myself and all of our crew, thank you for watching. Now, here's why you're going to want to watch the show this weekend. Let me give you just a little bit of insight what we got.
This week on Huckabee, Congressman Jim Jordan, comedian Karen Morgan,
getting through her 3-hour grueling shift at Target.
Lee Strobel makes the case for heaven, and the Malpass brothers perform. Watch Huckabee on Saturday at 8, 7 Central, and again on Sunday at 9, 8 Central, right here on TBN.